Mic is on? Or? Okay, all right, cool. Welcome everyone to our session today on SAP Leonardo blockchain application integration. My name is Andreas Fichter. I'm part of the SAP Innovation Center Network Group where we work on the incubation of blockchain. So the team started with this topic quite a few years ago, and it's still growing. And so this session will give you a little bit of an overview of what we are doing with an emphasis on integration topics. There is the official app. Please use it to rate and provide feedback to the session. I also have to show this. So given the state of the topic, there's definitely some forward-looking statements in my presentation today, which could change at any time. So yeah, don't get mad if we not ship anything or something that we are not providing at the end of the day. Although we might present it here today. So the goal of this session is really to cover quite a few topics. So I first will start a little bit with blockchain in the enterprise. How does the topic apply? What are we doing? What are some topics we are looking at? Also, what is SAP already doing in blockchain in terms of technology? What services are we providing as part of our cloud offerings? And then really go to the meat of the presentation when it comes to how do you integrate those services? Could you potentially integrate blockchain with your business processes? And this could be either for S/4HANA in this case or for actually the HANA database. And then we will have a little bit of an outlook. Like I said, this session is really meant to be more of an overview for all of those topics. We actually pretty much have deep dive sessions for all of those points. So on all of those things, I will recommend you, if you're interested in learning more, to go to some more sessions, and I will point out the sessions on the slides. All right, blockchain in the enterprise. Before we start, show of hands, who knows already? I think everyone knows what blockchain is or has heard about it, right? Anyone working on a blockchain project right now? Okay, few people, a little bit unsure. Okay. So it seems to be still a little bit of a new topic. There's a couple of terms floating around out there, right? I guess everyone has heard about Bitcoin, the cryptocurrency. There's also the term blockchain, and then the term distributed ledger technology. So Bitcoin is really a use case of blockchain. It's a cryptocurrency. There's a couple of other out there. Was pretty exciting last year because it was really volatile. It went up a lot. It went now down a lot. So people made some money, or a lot of money. People lost a lot of money, and it made for good press. Bitcoin is not synonymous with blockchain. It's really like a use case of it. So blockchain, at the other hand, is really the architectural concept. And when it comes to enterprise, that's what we're really actually looking at. So the idea of the decentralized, secure, direct exchange of digital transfer of value and assets. And then if you want to take the term even a little bit broader, it's distributed ledgers. So the idea of sharing, replicating data across multiple sites, country, and institutions without a central administrator or central data storage. When it comes to different technologies or solutions, there's a lot of different ones out there. Some are more on the distributed ledger side, some are more on the blockchain side. There's, of course, an overlap between those things. There's also things you might have heard of what's considered a public blockchain, in contrast to like an enterprise or permission blockchain. So on the public side, it's, again, really those cryptocurrencies mainly right now, right? Bitcoin, Ethereum, and others. And on the enterprise permission side, the idea is really that we use those concepts, but instead of having a truly open permissionless network where everyone can join, we actually apply those principles in an enterprise context where we want to have this idea of a single source of truth and then build a network amongst known participants and a permissioned network here. And this is really also where we see a lot of those use cases. So this kind of idea of building or using the technology to support multi-party business processes. Whenever you have a business processes that spans beyond your companies, where there's ideally more than two partners involved, and where you kind of want to have this idea of a single source of truth. So use cases where you have a lot of reconciliation, a lot of paper-based processes, where papers are sent back and forth, where there might be some disputes and other things. So how can you, the idea is to use the technology in those cases. So this could be in the enterprise in apply in a lot of different cases. Supply chain, for instance. This could be supply chain in terms of like import-export processes. It could be so international trade. It could be supply chain in terms of logistics, trade finance. It could be, on the other hand, of course, financial services, payments, and other things. So if you want to, we're going to cover one use case in a little bit of a detail as an example here when we get to the S4 part. But if you're interested in additional sessions that are covering more use cases and application of blockchain in the enterprise, I would recommend you those two talks, the lightning talk that happens tomorrow afternoon at 5, and there is also another session, AIN 113. My colleague is covering use cases in the blockchain space. So when we see blockchain in the enterprise, we really see it actually consists of three things. Yes, it's the technology, and that's what people usually start with and talk a lot about. But to be honest, we believe it's actually the smallest piece. I mean, yes, a couple of people are scared about it, intimidated, because it seems to be so complicated, and how do we deal with this? But if you think about the overall picture and how this might integrate with your business processes, it's actually the smaller piece of the puzzle. Where we think is a lot of emphasis is needed is really on the business processes side, because at the end of the day in the enterprise, a lot of companies have their system of records already there. They have their business software up and running. So just because there's something new like blockchain, no one will go and throw everything away and start from the green field. So it's actually more about how do we integrate those business processes we have already with blockchain. And oftentimes what we also then see is that at the end of the day, to make really use of this, you need a new network-based business model. So especially in the enterprise, the question then always comes up, what is the network? Who is participating? How do we govern this? How do we set this up, right? So there's really those three components. Today in the session, we will talk a little bit about the technology. We talk mainly about the integration into the business processes. But I just want to keep you in mind that probably the biggest piece is actually on the business side in terms of how to set up my use case, who would be the participants, how do we share and collaborate, and how bring those companies together. Unfortunately, we will not cover this in this session today, but there's other sessions, as I mentioned, and I will give you an overview at the end again what other sessions are available during TechEd. So we started this journey like back in 2017. We had the first services available as a pilot back then in SAP Cloud Platform. So what we have done is really as part of our team in the Innovation Center, we looked at the available blockchain technologies out there that we think are most suitable for the enterprise, something like a Hyperledger Fabric, for instance, and took them and brought them to the SAP ecosystem as part of SAP Cloud Platform. So it's not about us providing a new protocol here. It's really leveraging industry standards, as far as you could call them standards, because it's so new. And that's what we have done so far. So we have taken Hyperledger Fabric and a multi-chain as the two first protocols that are available in SAP Cloud Platform. This happened Sapphire, so they're available now for a few months. And this really should lower the barrier of entry in terms of making it fairly easy to set up a new blockchain node that then can be connected to a blockchain network and also integrated into your SAP landscape. We still try to expand and look at additional protocols. We just announced yesterday that we also will support a quorum for Ethereum-based smart contracts. There's a couple of things we're doing around blockchain enablement services, blockchain services to help with integration and building applications, which we will cover later, as well as the HANA integration, which is also part of the session. Again, my colleague Alexander will talk more in detail about this stuff in his session in AIN 112. So feel free to check out that session if you want to have a little bit more of a deep dive how those services work in SAP Cloud Platform. So how do we really see this integrating now? So what we're offering as services are really down here, right, in SAP Cloud Platform. So this is the services we have right now. And like I said, we want to make it easier for adoption and integration here and kind of give some first building blocks to build blockchain-based applications. We know already that if you think about blockchain and the idea of this kind of ledgers that span across companies or networks that span whole industries where companies come together to collaborate, exchange information for different use cases, it will not work if we say, oh, if you want to do blockchain with SAP, you have to use Hyperledger Fabric and you have to be in the SAP Cloud Platform. That's the only thing we're going to offer. We know already that, that there is going to be sooner or later some companies that either prefer other cloud providers or other deployment models, might be in another cloud infrastructure, or even if they have the skills and needs to deploy blockchain nodes on premise. And that's why we want to be on this immutable data exchange layer on the bottom, really as open as possible. So we want to offer multiple blockchain protocols, as well as multiple deployment options in terms of having either nodes hosted and provided by us, but also integrate nodes that are coming from other providers. Okay, let's talk about the integration piece. So first, S/4HANA. So I want to start with a little bit of an example, which hopefully helps you to illustrate a little bit better. So the use case we want to cover here is what we call open items tracking. It's in the area procure to pay. And as you know, in a process when you procure things, it's a lot of documents that potentially go back and forth. So a buyer might create a purchase order, the seller creates a sales order, there's maybe delivery documents, delivery notifications. There's a lot of documents going back and forth, but it's really hard to have a single source of truth as well as a single cohesive view on both ends. So everyone has their system of record, has their data silo, and sooner or later you might run into the problem that you have to reconcile because there's some disputes or things that don't fit together. So, so think about if only invoices are paid partially because some goods are shipped, but they might be damaged. So the buyer might only pay for 3 pieces instead of 5 without notifying the supplier. And then you have a whole back and forth in terms of what was the quality, what was delivered, what was paid, and whatnot. So with blockchain, the idea is here, if we can combine the information that's in both systems, we have a simple single source of truth that's auditable. Everyone has the same information and can act accordingly, and you can also notify each other. So let me switch over to my browser. This doesn't work, of course. No, perfect. So what we have built here is exactly that. So what you see here is a view that now combines information out of both systems. So if you would be on the buyer side for your process, you would potentially only see those documents in the best case, and they might be still scattered among different systems, so you might not even know all of those information. And if you are the supplier side, you might only see this information here, right? So the flow between those documents. So the idea here is now that if for the data that's actually shared across the different parties, if you combine it, everyone sees immediately the information and has a single source of truth. And then it's actually rather easy to, first of all, see how the information flows, but then also see if there is some inconsistency. So for instance, the outbound delivery said there were 5 pieces shipped. The billing document also says is for 5 pieces, but then the supplier ends up only paying for 3 pieces. So immediately the system can start flagging here that there is some clarification needed. Now there might be a good reason why the supplier only, why there was only 3 pieces delivered or paid, but at the end it really helps you to have this single source of truth and show the information in the system. So how do we build this kind of integrations here? Let me go back. So there is a couple of extensibility options here. So When it comes to S4, especially S4HANA Cloud, as you know, of course, this is all managed by SAP. So there is some ways to extend it via extension points on different levels. If you want to integrate different data fields or other things or analytical queries. But if you want to really extend your application, you have to go to what's called side-by-side applications. So in this case, your side-by-side application really lives on the SAP Cloud Platform. And the idea is that you then can extend your cloud application on any level you need with the functionality that might be missing. So this works, of course, for both on-premise and cloud applications. For on-premise, you need something that's called a cloud connector that you install into your on-premise environment that makes this a secure tunnel up to the cloud platform. But then you have the possibility to integrate those things. And again, there's 2 sessions on the top of the screen that I would recommend for a deep dive. But I show you a little bit more in terms of architecture and also a demo how this looks like. So the idea is that there's a couple of components that are provided already by SAP and that you can use out of the box. So those could be a blockchain node like multi-chain that you can provision in our cloud platform using our blockchain services here. And then on top of that, you can start leveraging the Cloud SDK. So the colleagues of the Cloud SDK started building in functionality for consuming those services. So they make it rather easy, and I show you some code snippets in a moment, to then build your side-by-side application here that directly can talk to an S4 system, either via Cloud Connector if it's on-premise or directly. So let me see how that integration looks like. So this is now an S4 system. We want to create a new purchase order. Oh, sorry. Oh, I have to exit. Thanks for letting me know. Let me exit this so the screen is switching over. Better? Thanks. So, okay. No, all right. Let me get this. This should get populated. All right. One. All right, we say we want 5 of this, and we want. Sorry, the network connection is lacking a little bit in here. All right, let me see. Of course, it doesn't work. Sorry about that. 1 second. Ah. Come on. Oh, I don't want to go there. All right, unfortunately, I'm not sure if I get this to work here. No. Why does it doesn't let me select the right material, unfortunately. Okay, let me try this again from scratch. Yeah. Nah. Sorry. Sorry? Which one? This one? That should be pre-filled. Oh, okay. Down here. Oh, okay. This should go here. Okay. Let me see. No? No. Yeah. No, I think now it works. All right. Let's see if that works. Oh, okay. All right. That should have worked. So we got a new object now. So we now see that the object should also show up here. Okay, the connection doesn't work. Anyway, just jumping forward to the, so what we should have seen that the object is created and then it's also created directly in the blockchain. So what you see here is the multi-chain blockchain cockpit. So the data is then written from our application, or it's extracted from the S4 system after the purchase order is created, and then it's also added to the multi-chain instance here. And the idea here is really in terms of extending, we're going to offer a few different options, but in this case, it's really building on what we are providing already, right? So you have the blockchain node, you have the blockchain services, the object services, there's a couple of services we're going to provide to work on this, which we'll get to at the end, or this would be where you take the S4 Cloud SDK to build your integration, and then you can integrate that with your blockchain, with your business application. And like I said, the SDK makes this rather easy. So as long as you're in a Java environment, so the SDK only supports Java and JavaScript right now. But if you do that, it actually makes you very easy to connect to the blockchain node. So with a few lines of code, you have to set up your blockchain node. But then you get from the environment, you get the connection to the blockchain node, and you can immediately invoke and query the blockchain, and this works for both of the services we are currently offering for Hyperledger Fabric and multi-chain. And if you don't use Java, let's say you are still you want to use this with an ABAP system or in any other programming language, it's still rather easy because what the blockchain services expose are REST services at the end of the day. So even if you are in an ABAP system, you can actually use those REST services to integrate them directly into your system and call out of your system there. So those are different blockchain protocols. They are Hyperledger Fabric is one protocol. There's a quite large organization behind it called the Hyperledger, or it's part of the Linux Foundation, and the Hyperledger project has more than 200 members, big companies. SAP is one of them, IBM and a few others. And multi-chain is based on the Bitcoin protocol, but there's a company called CoinScience behind it, and they took that protocol and made it more enterprise ready, and also open sourced it, but they also keep supporting it. So if you're more interested in those sessions, or in this kind of information, I recommend you one of our other sessions, or we have a blockchain booth down at the show floor. If you want to come by as part of the Leonardo space, we can walk you through the different options and show you how this looks like. So there's different, so when it comes to S4 integration, there's different options. So there will be functionality we will build in for certain scenarios, like request for quotation, for instance, in the procurement. So that's functionality that will come later, directly built in. But for most scenarios, if you want to integrate, you can use already either the Cloud SDK directly yourself, or some of those business services we're going to provide. And like I said, if this all doesn't work, you can also use directly the REST services to integrate. Now, there's a second level of integration if you really want to go further down on, so the S4 integration is more on application level, right? Because you build your side-by-side application and you use the different APIs and integration options to build your side application. But there's actually another option which we providing for blockchain integration that's really down on HANA database level. So the idea is really that you can combine data that might live in a blockchain that's shared across with your business partner in the network, together with business data that's still in your HANA system that's not exposed to the outside world. So even there is blockchain and we want to share data for certain use cases, of course, there will be data that's proprietary to you, confidential, and that will not leave your premises. And this data most likely will reside in HANA. So the idea is, again, to lower the adoption, to make it really easy to integrate the data that comes from a blockchain with your business data that resides in HANA. So you could actually insert and update the data, so it's also easier in terms of skills, because you have already probably database admins that know how to operate a HANA system. And I will show you that you can just, with an insert statement into a HANA database table, then also write this data into a blockchain. And the other idea is, of course, to use the capabilities of HANA we have already to leverage data in a blockchain better. So think about combining data, building views and analytics that potentially combine your business data with your blockchain data, or even analyze the data in the blockchain itself. So what we can do with the setup is you can replicate the data from a blockchain into your HANA database system and into your column store using what's called a smart data integration adapter. This really allows you to insert, update, and delete data. And you might ask why update and delete? Isn't a blockchain immutable? Yes, it is. So the idea is not to really delete the data, but what you often can do is kind of mark the data as deleted, right? So you might can say, oh, this business object is no longer relevant. I mark it as deleted, but you can still query the history of the whole object, so you know still when it was created or when some data fields might have changed. And as part of the integration, you really get more than just the actual business data. You also get actually access to the blockchain metadata, the transaction metadata if needed, or the payload itself. So the integration consists of two pieces. One lives on the SAP Cloud Platform, and that's what we call our HANA Integration Enablement Service, which you will deploy on your HANA Cloud Platform and configure there. And then there's the Smart Data Integration Adapter that gets installed onto your HANA database system and makes the connection. Let me access this. So we have a small application here that just writes some car data into our HANA database system. So what you can see on the bottom is that it just generates, so this is an XS application sitting on HANA that generates some insert statements for the database table. So we can execute that statement here. And unfortunately, I can try again, but the network connection didn't allow me to pull this data directly here now. So I reloaded it for you, or I preloaded it. So what you would see in the HANA database system now is that the data is in different formats. You have either the table, so the SDI connector will pull every few seconds the blockchain and load and copy the latest data into your HANA database system, which is configurable. So this is the business data that you then can use. Or, like I said, you get actually access to all the block information and transactions that are in the blockchain, and if you want to analyze those. And if we, again, switch over to our cockpit, this will now show the entry we just added. So the query we sent from here was now written into the HANA database table and also written into the blockchain where the data can be exchanged with different partners. Yes. So the idea is now that in HANA, we really pull the data out and replicate it into our system. And the SDI connector will make sure the data stays in sync. It's an actual copy, yes. I mean, you can you can have that. So like I said, there's then different views, right? So this is just the business data view, where you just say, okay, what's the actual data values I'm interested in? And maybe there is some information in terms of which block that was written into, what was the transaction ID, and of course the timestamp when the information was written. But then you can really go down on metadata level. So here it's just like, what are the blocks in the blockchain, and what is the hash of that block, and the data hash of the previous block, and all those kind of information, right? Yes. It's an amend in this one, yes, of course. So the data is not deleted, it's always added, and then you can have the whole history of that data. So so there's the services in our cloud platform. So there's the blockchain enablement service, which HANA falls under, which you can use to configure your HANA connection. So this looks like this. So you set up a service instance here, and you connect it. In this case, it's connected to a multi-chain, and here you can actually configure now. Do you want to have this block information and this messages and everything replicated into your HANA system, or do you just want what we call the world state, kind of the latest data, the latest information, the latest business data? And you can also configure if your HANA database system should be able to write back to the blockchain or not. So if you only have an analytic use case where you just want to run analytics on top of it, you probably don't need that. Yeah, that's done through the blockchain node then. I mean, the data is from the HANA system, we give it to the blockchain node, and the blockchain node itself gives it to the network. So.
Right. We managed to get a hold of the web service anyhow to write to the node, right?
Yes.
Normally, I would think you need to go sure that the source system is somehow persistent of the blockchain as well, in order to validate that the source is a safe source. You know, the concept of spinning shit out.
Sure, yes. I mean, that applies here as well, of course. I mean, right now we only work with technical users, right? So there is no identity concept. I can talk a little bit about services we are working on right now that are coming in the future. So identity is one of them, but the most basic version is just the technical user that writes into it. So for the technical user, there's no difference between the blockchain node that lives on SAP Cloud Platform versus the messages that come from HANA through the blockchain service into the blockchain. We work on, yes, identity is one of the topics we are working on in addition, yeah. Not only for this, but in general.
Did you say the SPI adapter pulls?
Yes, right now it pulls.
So an insert doesn't trigger.
No, it's pulling every few seconds right now. That's how the colleagues implemented it. It depends on the protocol you're using right now. For multi-chain, those are the default multi-chain REST APIs we expose. So there might be some changes, although I don't foresee them making huge changes. So yes, you might have to deal with this in your code at some point if there is some change, if you upgrade your service to a new protocol level. For Hyperledger Fabric, we actually built a wrapper service around. So you actually defined your own REST interface that defines the functions that are exposed to outside. So you're actually in control of how those functions look like and if you want to update them or not. So it gives you more control about those things. So.
I would like to know what are the functional use cases. You said about some session when you started. What is this session? AIN?
There is, so for the use cases, it's AIN 113. And for the cloud platform blockchain services, it's AIN 112. Or feel free to see us downstairs at the booth. So there's show floor all day of today and also tomorrow. We also have this documented already. If you go out to help.sap.com, the portal, there is already services available for, help pages available for all the services we have, the Hyperledger Fabric, the multi-chain, and also some of the enablement services we are providing. And there's also the documentation for the HANA adapter. So it's currently also still considered in beta, but the colleagues are working on making this productive very, very soon. Let's switch back. So this is just an overview again of the architecture, how it looks like in this case. So for the HANA integration, so again, we have a blockchain node on the bottom. We have the blockchain services that then for integration into the cloud platform. And on top of that, we now have our blockchain HANA integration service. So this is kind of a service we are providing that you then can leverage to use those shadow tables or virtual tables directly with the SDI adapter in your HANA system. And this works for HANA on-premise as well as HANA in the cloud, of course. And there is also a deep dive session of the HANA team that goes into more details here. So the AT111 is another session I recommend you if you want to know more about this or want to go a little bit deeper on this topic.
So from licensing perspective, can we get just the cloud blockchain if you go to the previous slide? Or we have to buy the entire SAP cloud platform? Can we just get the cloud platform blockchain?
So you need a cloud platform account, obviously, like a cloud platform, like a global accounting cloud platform. In this case, our services are running on Cloud Foundry for blockchain service. And then you need to have a service on the bottom here that either provisions you a node or in the future allows you to bring your node or your network connection. So there's also options to connect to nodes that are outside of SAP Cloud Platform. So you need that piece, and the enablement piece, the rest is all for free then. So the enablement, we don't charge for this enablement service. And as far as I know, the HANA team, as soon as you have a HANA license, you get the SDI adapter as well for free. So the integration is there. So of course you need your HANA system and the license for that, and you will need the license for Cloud Platform as well as the service here on the bottom. The latest, yeah.
Is there any sort of enhanced SQL query support such that you can query the shadow table and maybe ask for that record and get its history?
It's not built in. You have to build it. You have to build that SQL statement yourself.
Really no extra sort of enhanced query support?
Not yet, not yet. I mean, like I said, this is still beta, so.
But if you wanted that now, you should probably just go to another node and query it normally.
Yes, or you can build your own views on HANA, right? I mean, you can go to that shadow table and you build a view and say, okay, for this ID, give me the whole history, right? Instead of. There is some manual work and views and statements you have to build, but it's, yeah, you can do that.
So how do the partners kind of see the data? Like we have a vendor, customer, and one company, right? How does security kind of manage between I don't want the customer to see the purchase order settings, right? And
So there's, yeah. So there's different levels. So for blockchain, depending on the protocol you're using, for Hyperledger Fabric or multi-chain, there's first of all something called channels. So you can set up channels between different business partners. So only business partners that are part of certain transactions can see what's happening in there, right? So it's not, even if you have a network of hundreds of participants, the data might be only replicated between a few parties that are actually taking part of this transaction. There is, for instance, in Quorum, something like private transactions. So even participants that are in the same network, if you have a private transaction between two parties, only the parties can see that information. But of course, at some point, you have to decide if this data should be on the blockchain or not, right? So if you say my sales order price is proprietary, or there's some proprietary information, you probably shouldn't put it into the blockchain in the first place. So, but there's some different possibilities on the blockchain level itself where you can actually make sure that data is separated and only visible to those parties.
how do they view that? I mean, do they have to build their own UI? Or who is hosting, they have to build the UI for all the participants?
Well, it depends on your use case, I would say, and how you want to integrate it, right? I mean, the easiest level is, of course, that they have their blockchain node and have access through that data through their blockchain node. Now, how do they leverage that data? Well, either by integrating into their backend system, right? Or by building some custom apps and UIs on top of it. Like I said, sooner or later, SAP will ship certain functionality in certain products that are blockchain enabled. So is S4 or some other products we are building right now that are then blockchain enabled products that you then can just, if you have that product or it's an extension to that product, you can just activate it and connect it to a blockchain node, and it's then directly integrated into your system. So you can consume the data that's exchanged between the business partners in that system.
And how do you choose the node? Which one is applicable for which use cases?
Between the different protocols, you really have to look on your use case. I mean, something like multi-chain, they don't support something like smart contracts right now, so you cannot have like programming in there, right? Therefore, they have some other capabilities when you want to issue assets and other things. So you have to really look at the use case and what the capabilities are, and do you need private transactions or not, things like that. So there's no easy answer I can point to you to really take some like deeper dive into your scenario and thinking about. So, what was the question in the back? And I think we are covering this in a couple of other sessions. I will show you that slide in a moment. So there's only one more slide I want to cover from the content-wise. So there's a little bit of a summary as well as an outlook. So what we have looked at today is, or briefly talked about, is a little bit about those foundational services that enable blockchain in the SAP Cloud Platform for different blockchain protocols. The S4 integration really lives more here right now in terms of like Cloud SDK and other things you can leverage to make the connection to your backend system. But then on top of that, we start providing additional services, right? So to make the consumption of the blockchain protocols easier, we will have some use cases or some certain functionality built in terms of services for like event recording, verification, audit trail, a provenance service, and then identity is definitely one topic we are currently looking into. So how do you actually map potentially a business user in your SAP system to a blockchain, and not only use technical users all the way up to self-sovereign governed identities at some point maybe. And also the HANA part falls really under this, where we have the HANA integration piece in SAP Cloud Platform.
If we have S4 HANA on-premises, then we will not be able to integrate with partners using this blockchain or any other.
Why? I mean, the idea would be to have a cloud connector connect to the cloud platform, have a blockchain node there that's connected to your system, and then you can use that one that's already in the cloud to then connect to your business partners for the data you want to exchange.
Are you using cloud just to connect the data point, but the data will not be exposed in the cloud?
Well, the data that's in the blockchain will be in the cloud. I mean, at the end of the day, if you think about blockchain and exchanging data, you shouldn't necessarily worry where it exactly resides, because it will be distributed anyway and it's out of your control, right? Whatever is not on your node, or even the data that's on your node is replicated to other nodes, so that's outside of your control. So of course, again, you have to be careful what data you write there, but yeah.
Actually, that is a good point, because if you're putting data to the blockchain through cloud, you cannot be sure whether it lives only in its way to the blockchain. If you are running on-premise nodes, you can be sure it goes only to the blockchain. But maybe.
And then there is, so this is on functionality side, and then on the bottom we also start, like I said, opening up the network a little bit more in terms of network extensions. So the idea that a node doesn't have to be an SAP Cloud Platform, but you can actually host your own node on-premise or use nodes that are hosted somewhere else. So bring a node to SAP Cloud Platform, or like extend or connect your your backend system to actually an existing blockchain network that might be running somewhere else. This is it in terms of content. There is, like I said, a lot of different sessions on the topic that are still going on tomorrow. So if you're more interested in the use case part of it, like I said, the lightning talk or the AIN 1113, there's a couple of more sessions that go in a little bit more detail, and there's also information on the bottom when you want to look up the Cloud SDK or the enablement services, the documentation we have. That's all from my side. Thank you very much for coming today. Hope you can provide some feedback through the app, and yeah, feel free to reach out to us. My colleague Satya, who is actually sitting over there, is our product owner for the platform, or the services in our cloud platform. So if you have questions or anything that comes to mind afterwards, feel free to reach out or see us down at the blockchain booth on the show floor for the next 2 days. Thank you very much.